So yes, we are beginning with Rwanda. As you like I already mentioned earlier, and as you should already know, the president Paul Kagame has secured another term as the president of Rwanda. This has led to a lot of people saying, "Oh, Rwanda is not a democratic society. Oh, Kagame is an authoritarian. Oh, this and this. No opposition party. Blah 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 blah." Okay, now let's talk. We expected him to win, and he won. But quite all right, Kagame does some things, particularly with his neighbors, that I'm not quite a fan of. But I want to talk about what he has done in Rwanda. This Rwanda is the same country that let's not forget that Rwanda is the same country that experienced the most devastating genocide, ethnic genocide in modern history when with the Rwanda civil war. In fact, this is one of the reasons I respect Paul Kagame a lot. So, the way what Rwanda witnessed, we should expect that by now there should still be ethnic tensions in the country. But under under Kagame's strong leadership, that doesn't exist. Under Kagame's strong leadership, he has been able to unite a country that experienced the most devastating ethnic cleansing, genocide in modern history. I believe about 800,000 to a million were killed. Do you understand? So you should the way things based on their history, you would expect that things should be chaotic now, but it's not. Kagame has been able to unite the country under his strong leadership. Having said that, Rwanda is one of the most peaceful countries in Africa. Rwanda is a place where you can. It's one of the best performing countries in Africa when it comes to ease of doing business. Rwanda is safe. The educational sector and the health sector in Rwanda is very impressive. So these are the things that Kagame has done. And so I don't. This is the reason why I'm not surprised that he gets these votes because yeah, he gets these votes and he wins these elections because he has done impressively well for his country. But having said that, I want to use this opportunity to discuss this whole thing of democracy. Now, these are 4 year cycle. Like in Nigeria, it's 4 years. In some other African countries, they have 5 years. Rwanda, I believe Rwanda is 7 years. But these are cycle of elections. I have an issue with it because this yeah, I have an issue with it because it makes our leaders think small. They don't have long vision. If you're running a company, for example, you hear businesses discuss their long-term goals 50 years down the line, 100 years down the line. You also hear them say 30 years as well as short-term goals. But the way neoliberal democracy works with all these 4 year cycle, and it's not just an African thing, even in the United States. This is one of my biggest issues with democracy, this type of democracy that we practice, is that it makes our leaders see short term. If you need a long term vision to run your company properly, don't you need a long term vision to run a country properly? I think you do. So for me, it's not so much about changing government as it is for the government to be effective. That's why I started this segment by mentioning the accomplishments of President Paul Kagame. You can't deny the things that he has done. Rwanda is not a hotspot for terrorism. It's not a hotspot for ethnic violence because of Paul Kagame's leadership. Rwanda is a safe country. Rwanda is doing well. Like businesses in Rwanda, it's a favorable place to run businesses because of Paul Kagame's leadership. The educational sector is doing well. The health sector is doing well because of Paul Kagame's leadership. So we are not. This is not an issue of the leader is ineffective, and even in spite of his ineffectiveness, he's still holding on to power. As to be the case with Paul Biya in Cameroon, we spoke about that in the last episode of the Amanda Show because I think it's a very that the government of Cameroon has not done anything for their country and yet he's clinging on to power. That I have an issue with that. But I don't have an issue with the president who stays 10 years, who stays 20 years in power. I believe Kagame has been in power this year makes it 24 years. If as long as the government is effective, if you look at the United States, the leaders tend to think in 4 year cycle. The same thing with Nigeria. In fact, the current president of Nigeria, we're having issues with his administration because of the way the economy of Nigeria has plummeted. In spite of that, they are still saying 2027. You haven't fixed the current issue that the country is experiencing. You're talking about 2027. So that's the problem. So this form of democracy limits you. You don't think far. I'm going to give you another example with China, the Communist Party in China. Because it's a party and they don't do this whole 4 year, this kind of 4 year cycle, they can have a 100-year vision for China. And so it doesn't matter who comes into power, you're expected to effectively pursue that 100-year vision of China. So they think long term. The same thing with Russia. They say, oh, Putin has been in power for a long time. Putin is holding this, blah, 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 blah. But let's not forget that under President Vladimir Putin, Putin brought Russia from its knees. Literally, Russia had terrorism issues. Russia had poverty issues. Russia had um, security issues. The whole thing, the situation in the country was terrible. The people were poor. Yes, this same Russia now. Putin brought Russia back on its feet to make it a global player, a world power. But he needed time to be able to accomplish that. I would have taken President Obasanjo's in Nigeria. I would have taken President Obasanjo's leadership over again. 20 years of Obasanjo, 30 years of Obasanjo. I would have taken that because Obasanjo put Nigeria on a path of prosperity. I would have taken that than have these other four years leaders who have come in and they have ravaged and decimated the economy of Nigeria. In 2015, under Jonathan, Nigeria was over $500 billion economy. It was projected to hit $1 trillion in a short time. Today, as we speak, Nigeria is sitting at 200 billion. This 4 year cycle of incompetence. So for me, it's not so much to those who are saying, why is Kagame holding on to power, blah, blah, blah. To those who are making that argument and making and faulting Kagame with that, it's not so much about things. In fact, I would happily take a leader who stays in power for a long time as long as the person is working than have a leader who stays in power for just 4 years and decimates the country. Do you understand? So I'm saying that because I need Africa to, you know, we need to begin to have mold our systems, our respective political systems, our political institutions, our form of governance, and even our economy. We need to be able to mold our systems to fit the African narrative, the African situation. We are not because many of countries in Africa, all we did was inherit what the colonizers left. So why, for example, why do we have three arms of government? Or they tell you oh, is to separate the whole thing so that no single arm can have absolute power to separate the whole thing. That's what they tell you. Because these three arms of government formed because of an issue they were having in the West. Are you feeling? I do you understand where I'm coming from? So they formed this thing, they formed their political systems based on the challenges they had. What if you look at lots of countries in Africa? There are three arms of government in paper. At the end of the day, most of them are in the pocket of the president. Most of them are in the pocket of the president. So they don't even function the way they were supposed to function because we do not know why they were set up. Do do you get where I'm coming from? We do not know why they were set up. We just know it's supposed to be like this. Why is it supposed to be like this? Then we give you the reason the Westerners told, the colonizers told us. I don't fault it really because it's supposed to be a system that works. It works for them, right? So we give you a reason that the colonizers told us. But then when you begin to look at the way we implement it, it's it's as good as not existent. So what I'm advocating for is those who are faulting Kagame and saying he's authoritarian, he's a this, he's a that. We need to look away from the status quo and begin to mold our political systems, mold our economic systems to suit our respective countries. If you look at China, they tell you it's communism from a China point of view, from a Chinese point of view. So they took that communism something, but they molded it for their own challenges to fit their unique state because that's every country in Africa we are different. If there's a reason for okay in Rwanda for example they say there's no freedom of the press. I haven't really it's possible it's really possible but I haven't really taken a real close look at that to know it's true but I'm not saying it's not true. I'm not making that argument. I'm just saying now one if you listen to what the government say at times you can take fault with it. I'm not taking sides. I just want to lay down the arguments. If you listen to what the government says at times, they have said that on certain circumstances where they have to sanction some of the media houses, that they are trying to stoke ethnic issues in the country. And now this is a country that things are still things can still be sensitive because the genocide was just 1994. It's not a long time ago. It's just 30 years ago. It's not a long time ago. So many of those people who perpetrated this act are still alive. Many of the descendants of those people who were killed, many of those who even saw their family members being killed, are still alive. 30 years ago is not a long time. So those wounds, even if the country is trying to move away from it, those wounds can still be there. Do you understand? So that is why they may be dealing with issues gently, gently, gently. So what am I trying to say? In as much as, like I said before, not not every foreign policy of Paul Kagame do I approve of, but we cannot deny what he has done for his country. And if Rwanda is trying to create a system, even someone made an argument, I thought it was very insightful. Someone made an argument that there are no freedoms in Rwanda, and then like freedom of the press, freedom of speech, freedom of different things. Now, another person now said, I was listening to the debate. Another person now said, it has never been. Rwanda is right now. Rwanda is just trying to create its own system. So there's nothing to say. Oh, there was freedom of the press before. Then Paul Kagame came and ended it. None of those things exist. At least based on that debate, none of those things existed. None of those things existed. So it's right now that Rwanda is trying to form its own political institution and keep something strong. Rwanda is a country that is doing well for women's rights. I believe a good number of people in their parliament are women. It's also doing well for youth. The youths are well represented in the government. So I'm not saying it's perfect, but Rwanda is creating a system that works for it. Let them. This is the process of making that system. You're comparing yourself to the United States that has been working its system for over 200 years. Rwanda is 1994. You're comparing yourself to the UK that has been working its system for hundreds of years. Meanwhile, a country like Nigeria is just picking up from 1960. So of course you would fall. Of course you would have hiccups here and there. Nobody says it's going to be perfect. Or rather than say the way it is in the West, we have to put it here, or the way it is in China, we have to put it here. No, we for us, in fact, that is the reason why a lot of African countries seems like there is political, like the political systems are not strong because the political systems were not set up by us. Political systems are set up to be the answer to challenges that respective countries face. But when you inherit your own systems and your own institutions, you do not know why they were set up in the first place. You do not know the solution that they were set up to serve. They may tell you in theory, but until you have that pinch, right? Until you have that pinch, you may not know you may not know why the solution exists. Let me give you an example in Nigeria because this is where I'm from. This is where I stay. Let me give an example with Nigeria. Uh Judges are selected, which is the same way it is in the West and the rest of them. Our judges are selected by the president, are appointed by the president. What is to call the Supreme Court of judges and the rest of them? They are appointed by the president. But we have seen the challenge now that I have noticed is that this, at the end of the day, these people in the judiciary tend to be subservient to the president. So they're in the president's pocket. They tend to be in the president's pocket. Why? Because they feel, oh, it's you that gave me this thing, so I have to be loyal to you. That's a challenge. Now, in other countries, the president is selecting the Supreme Court judges and the rest of them. It works well, right? Based on their own challenges. But we now we have found out that if our president keeps selecting our Supreme Court this thing, we found out that they are now in the pockets of the president. So a solution to that could be, why don't we now have elections within our judiciary system? That means this is our way of really dividing the executive from the judiciary instead of the president to then be selecting the Supreme Court justices and the rest of them. Why don't we have elections? So the Nigerian Bar Association, the judiciary system, the lawyers and everybody within it, we elect those who go to the Supreme Court. That way, it's going to give them more autonomy over the executive arm of government. So these are the ways we need to begin to think. These are the ways we need to begin to think in Africa. What are the challenges we are facing? Let's not say, oh, we cannot adjust this thing because that's the way it is in the rest of the world. I'm opposing that. The fact that it's working in the rest of the world and we put it here, it's not working. And let us adjust it. Because these are the ways when we ourselves we set up our systems, we mold our systems to be answers to the challenges that respective African countries are facing. Our economic and political systems and institutions will be more effective. This is how we get more effective political systems and institutions. So it's not about mirroring what they are doing outside. It's about creating things to serve us. So that's what I'm advocating for. Instead of we to be fighting Paul Kagame, that is holding power for 250,000 years, for 250,000 years. And like I said before, I would have preferred to have 30 years of President Olusegun Obasanjo in Nigeria than have the nonsense we have had for several decades. So politics and economy, they are supposed to serve the people. When we look at it and we see it's not working, we change it. And if it's working, we find how can we make it function very well. And if it's functioning very well, we leave it. Leave Rwanda alone. The only thing I would say about Paul Kagame, I wish he would do better things with his neighbors and his foreign policy because a lot of things that we are hearing that he's doing outside of Rwanda is not beneficial to the continent. Like these are just accusations, although he has denied in their defense, the government of Rwanda have denied it. But the accusation is coming from everywhere, from the United Nations, from even fellow African countries. But if that is true, it's better to fix what is going on, like adjust your policy, your foreign policy. But when it comes to local politics, I think Paul Kagame is doing a good job. And if he's doing a good job for Rwanda, what are we complaining about? Over the past 24 years, President Paul Kagame has put Rwanda on the path of success. And if it stays on the path of success and prosperity, why are we faulting it? Well, let me know what you think. What's going on in Rwanda? Do you think Paul Kagame has overstayed as president? Are you in support of switching up government every cycle? Or do you think a strong leader who keeps things in order and is working very well for his country can stay as possible, as long as he's able to do the job of the president, not when he's senile, like what is going on in some leaders in other African countries and the United States. All right. Let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel.